Well, if you've been looking at the news, and it's really depending on which network or what your news source is, it may not be exactly front page material, but it's definitely second page material and really should be front page. And that's the Copenhagen climate talks going on. And with me from Organic Consumers Association, their political director, Alex Baden-Mayer, will kind of review the Copenhagen climate talks. Hey, Alexis, how are you?
Great, Dr. Steve. How are you doing?
I am fabulous. Now, this is something that has been anticipated for quite some time. World leaders met in September at the United Nations. They began talking about this thing. And, of course, now they're meeting officially in Copenhagen. What do they expect to realistically accomplish? Because they can give great speeches, they can make great proposals, but in the end, we have a financial system that really does not work in that direction. We have people's mindsets that don't really work in that direction. What do they think will come from this?
Well, the original idea was that they would leave Copenhagen with a binding agreement that would become a treaty signed by all of the parties, just like the Kyoto Protocol was an international treaty, never ratified by the United States, but signed by the United States when Al Gore went to the Kyoto meetings back in the 90s. So that was the idea. This was a revision of the Kyoto Protocol to bring our global agreement on greenhouse gas reduction up to date. But the disturbing thing about it is not only that they probably will not reach an agreement that is legally binding in Copenhagen in these 2 weeks, but that if they were to act on what was the likely agreement, that agreement would be to continue this carbon trading mechanism that initially came out of Kyoto. This was originally an idea that the free market could solve all of our environmental problems. If you just put a price on carbon, then you can change behavior through this market stimulus of making energy more expensive. But the tricky thing about what they decided to do is not only would they put a price on carbon, but they would allow folks to trade that then. You could trade in carbon credits. So, you know, this mechanism has been in place for several years now in Europe, and many other countries around the world have been participating. It's mostly been trading between European countries and developing nations in the global south. And, you know, it's generated a lot of economic activity, but it hasn't generated any reduction in greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, you know, very often, and I'm learning this more specifically watching what's going on with the so-called healthcare reform package, which is a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get into that right now. But you find out that very often these kinds of proposals may start initially by somebody with a very good intention, but before you know it, the multinationals get their hands on it behind the scenes, and they begin to, this now becomes just a game of statistics and numbers. And I've wondered if maybe we should take an entirely different tack on this whole thing. Yes, we need to reduce greenhouse gases, but to deal with it that way from a strictly environmental position may not be, after all, the strongest position. The average person, whether they be in Southeast Asia or Southeast United States, really doesn't get, in my opinion, this whole greenhouse gas thing. It doesn't make a difference to them. They're not dropping dead when they walk outside. But they are noticing at the store that food is becoming more expensive. They notice that we're importing a lot more food. They're noticing that food is not safe in many cases. And so I'm wondering if we should attack this whole thing by emphasizing doing the greenhouse stuff, but focusing on biodiverse farming, on localized food systems, on dealing with the food. They know the food. They deal with the food. They know the food is important. The hell with the greenhouse gas stuff. Am I making myself clear, or am I being convoluted?
Absolutely, and that's generally, we did get into these whole macro issues of carbon trading and whether that works or not, but primarily the Organic Consumers Association is interested in solutions, and that's really what gets obscured when we have to think about these really ridiculous market schemes that the corporations have come up. It really obscures the things that matter to people on a daily basis. And you're right, when it comes to climate change, I think people, we get some extreme weather events that make us wonder if there's something happening with the climate. But for the most part, people care about the price of food, the price of gas, and how much it costs to heat and cool their homes. And if you offer people solutions that reduce those prices and increase the quality of those services or those commodities, those needs, then I think we'll really get somewhere with people.
Couldn't say it better myself. And someone who is working in that direction is Alexis Baden-Mayer. Alexis, I appreciate always spending time with you, and I like it so much. How about if we do it again next week?
That sounds great. I always have the best time talking with you, Dr. Steve.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.